My name is Noah, and I'm a 29-year-old electrician living in Thornfield, a quiet little town nestled in the windswept hills of rural England. It's a place where time seems to stand still. Stone cottages line the lanes, sheep graze on the slopes, and the most thrilling event is the yearly bonfire night. I've always loved the simplicity here, tinkering with wires in my workshop, grabbing a pint at the Black Swan with my mates, wandering the fields with my collie, Scout. But that peace shattered the day I crossed paths with Isabel, the woman in the crimson dress who dragged me into a nightmare I can't wake from. It started on a damp November evening, the kind where fog clings to everything like a shroud. I just finished rewiring old Mr. Grayson's barn, my hands gritty with dust, and decided to take the shortcut home through the churchyard. The mist swirled around the crooked gravestones, the air thick with the scent of wet moss. I was halfway through when I saw her, a figure standing near the rusted iron gate, draped in a long, crimson dress that glowed like a wound against the gray twilight. Her auburn hair cascaded over her shoulders, and her eyes locked onto mine, sharp and unblinking, cutting through the fog like daggers. My stomach dropped, a cold sweat prickling my skin. I gripped my toolbox tighter, my knuckles whitening. "Hey, you all right?" I called, my voice echoing faintly. She didn't respond, just tilted her head, a thin smile creeping across her lips, a smile that didn't reach those chilling eyes. My toolbox slipped, banging against a stone, and I cursed as I bent to grab it. When I straightened up, she was gone, swallowed by the mist. My heart raced, thudding in my ears, and I bolted home, the crunch of gravel under my boots, the only sound breaking the silence. The next morning, I tried to laugh it off. Maybe she was a mourner, I told myself, lost in her grief. But that afternoon, while I was picking up fuses at the hardware store, I saw her again. She stood outside, just beyond the shop window, her crimson dress vivid against the drab brick wall. She was staring at me, hands folded calmly, that same eerie smile on her face. My fuses clattered to the floor, and I spun to the shopkeeper, old Bill. "There's a woman out there. She's watching me," I stammered, pointing. Bill squinted through the glass, but when I looked again, she'd vanished, leaving only the echo of my ragged breath. "She was there, I swear," I said, my voice tight. Bill scratched his beard, frowning. "Fog's been thick lately, Noah. Plays tricks on the eyes." But it wasn't a trick. Those eyes were real, too real, and they were fixed on me. She became a shadow I couldn't shake. I'd spot her at the edge of the village green while walking Scout, her dress swaying like a banner in the wind. She'd linger outside the Black Swan when I grabbed a drink with my mate Charlie, her silhouette framed by the pub's flickering sign. Once, I glimpsed her through the fogged-up window of a client's shed I was wiring, standing motionless at the lane's end. Each time, my chest tightened, my hands trembling despite the cold. I stopped taking shortcuts, kept my curtains drawn, but it didn't matter. She found me. I spilled it all to Charlie one night over a pint, my fingers drumming nervously on the table. This woman in a red dress, she's everywhere, just staring, I said, keeping my voice low. Charlie, a lanky postman with a knack for tall tales, leaned forward. What, like a ghost? You sure she's not just keen on you? He smirked, but it faded when he saw my expression. You're serious, he said, his eyes narrowing. I nodded, and he promised to watch out for her, though I could tell he thought I was overreacting. Then there was Maggie, my childhood friend, who ran the local bakery. We'd grown up together, racing bikes down these lanes, and she knew me better than anyone. I dropped by her shop one morning, desperate for a sane voice. You look like death warmed over, she said, sliding a coffee across the counter. Her curly brown hair was dusted with flour, her hazel eyes sharp with concern. I told her about Isabel, the dress, the staring, the way she seemed to haunt me. Maggie frowned, stirring her tea. That's not right, Noah. You need to tell the police. Sounds like a proper stalker. I shrugged, my throat dry. She hasn't done anything, just watches. Maggie slammed her mug down. That's enough to scare anyone. Report it. Her words stuck with me, but the encounters only grew stranger. One evening, I was locking up my workshop when I heard it. A soft, chilling hum drifting through the dusk, like a lullaby twisted into something sinister. I turned, and there she was, standing under a gnarled hawthorn tree across the road, her crimson dress catching the fading light. She was humming, her voice low and hypnotic, her eyes boring into mine. My toolbox crashed to the ground, tools scattering, and I shouted, "Who are you? What do you want?" The humming stopped, her smile widened, and she took a step closer, her bare feet silent on the damp earth. My legs locked, fear rooting me in place, but I forced myself to retreat, slamming the workshop door and fumbling with the lock. Through the cracked window, I saw her linger, her head cocked, before she faded into the twilight. Sleep became a stranger after that. Every creak of my cottage, every rustle of leaves sounded like her humming creeping closer. Scout growled at the shadows, his fur bristling, sensing something I couldn't name. I kept a crowbar by my bed, sitting up with bloodshot eyes, my mind racing. Was she outside, watching, waiting? I called the police the next day, my voice hoarse as I explained to Constable Davies, a stocky man with a clipped mustache. There's a woman in a red dress following me. Everywhere. She doesn't speak, just stares and hums. Davies scribbled notes, his pen loud in the quiet room. No threats? No contact? He asked, his tone skeptical. I shook my head, feeling small. We'll patrol around, he said, but without more. We can't do much." I left with a sinking feeling, their words ringing hollow. For a week, she vanished. No crimson dress, no haunting hum. I dared to hope she'd gone, let my guard slip. Charlie teased me about my red-dressed ghost, and Maggie baked me a loaf of bread to bring some color back to my face. But peace was a fragile lie, and it broke one stormy night. The wind roared outside, rattling my windows like an angry spirit. I was eating a late supper, sausage and mash, when Scout started barking, his ears pinned back. I set my fork down, my pulse quickening, and heard it, a sharp knock at the back door, cutting through the storm. "Who's there?" I shouted, grabbing the crowbar. Another knock, louder, more insistent. Scout snarled, and I crept to the kitchen, my breath shallow. Through the door's glass pane, I saw her, Isabel, soaked in rain, her crimson dress clinging to her like blood. She pressed a hand against the glass, her nails scraping slowly, leaving faint marks. Her lips moved, whispering something lost in the wind, her eyes burning into mine. "Get away!" I yelled, my voice cracking. She didn't flinch, just scratched harder, her smile stretching wider. I stumbled back, tripping over Scout, and dialed 999, my fingers clumsy. "She's at my house," I shouted to the operator. "She's trying to get in." The police arrived, their torches sweeping the yard, but she was gone. Only muddy footprints trailing into the woods remained. "Could be a prank," Davy said, but his eyes lingered on those prints, unease flickering in them. The next morning, I found it. A crimson scarf looped around my mailbox, wet and frayed like a noose. My hands shook as I untied it, bile rising in my throat. I called Maggie, my voice trembling. She left something outside. Maggie rushed over, her face paling at the scarf. "This is mad, Noah. You can't stay here." I reported it, but the police found no trace, no prints, no leads. Weeks later, I saw her again. I was at the Black Swan with Charlie, trying to reclaim some normalcy. As we laughed over a bad joke, I glanced out the window, and there she was, across the street, her dress a slash of red in the dark. She raised a hand, beckoning, her smile sharp and predatory. My pint shattered on the floor, glass splintering. "That's her," I whispered, pointing. Charlie's jaw dropped. "Bloody hell, she's real." He grabbed his jacket, ready to charge out. But when we reached the street, she was gone, her hum lingering in the air like a taunt. I fortified my life. New locks, a camera, a shotgun by my bed. But the fear stayed, a constant shadow. One night, walking Scout near the woods, I heard it, that chilling hum, rising like a tide. My blood froze. I turned, and there she was, at the tree line, her crimson dress glowing under the moon. She stepped forward, her voice swelling, wrapping around me like a trap. I ran, Scout barking wildly, my lungs burning until I reached home, slamming the door. I don't know who Isabel was, a specter, a stalker, or something worse. She hasn't returned, but her mark remains. The camera catches nothing. The woods stay silent. Yet I feel her eyes, her hum, lurking just out of sight. Thornfield's no longer a haven. It's a prison, and I'm waiting for her crimson whisper to call me again.